Gregory Wald of More Engineering, a faithful monthly Lorentzsen luncheon attender, will introduce our common friend, Leann Wolff.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Gregory Wald from More Engineering. I'm the communications manager and a 93 graduate of Concordia, so go Cobbers. I'm pleased to introduce Leann this morning, or this afternoon. I've known Leann for a little over a year, and I had the privilege of working with her. She's doing some work with our company. And first I'm going to read her prepared bio, and then I'll add a few things to it. A farm kid who made connections between diverse religious beliefs that continued to influence her faith and work with individuals, teams, and companies. Leann Wolff founded Great Outcomes Consulting with Mike Sleddy in 2010. She graduated from Concordia in 1982. I think you're an English writing major, aren't you? Is that it? Yeah. And later earned a Master of Arts degree from the University of St. Thomas in St. Paul. She spent more than 25 years working with some of today's best-known companies and gathering proven best practices from highly successful individuals. Throughout her career, she has built many high-functioning teams and facilitated hundreds of training, brainstorming, and decision-making sessions with teams ranging in size from 3 to 100. Great Outcomes Consulting helps their clients achieve business success by taking a tailored approach with their clients. In every interaction, the focus is to ensure that people working in the business connect to each other, the business, and their customers in a meaningful way. And so I think all that is true, but I will add a few things about Leann in working with her. I'll tell you, she's a very passionate person. She's passionate about doing the right thing. She's really passionate about the way people are treated. She wants to make sure that people are treated well and people are treated fairly. And if that does not happen, or if she perceives that does not happen, she gets very upset about it. So watch out. She's also a very good listener. She takes into account diverse perspectives and diverse points of view and considers them in the way she manages people. She's very skilled at facilitating a diverse group of people and getting them to an outcome. And finally, although she's I accuse her of being a socialist at times, but I probably go too far by saying that, so I'm going to back off. But she is a bit left of center, and but even though that's true, she's a dedicated business person. That's what I respect about her, and that she's very concerned about how a business makes money and how the processes within a company operate in order to achieve success. And so she's always dedicated to client success. She's always dedicated to business success, and she's really concerned about how businesses make money. So that's a good thing, and we will, as long as that's always the outcome, that's a good thing from a business perspective. So I'm really happy to be able to introduce her today, and I think we're looking forward to an interesting presentation here. So please help me welcome Leann Wolff.
So this isn't my normal way of working with folks. I usually figure out a process to work with my clients, and they do all the talking, and I add little inserts here and there. So for me to do a presentation, quite honestly, is just a little uncomfortable. And as I thought about it in the spring and was talking with Faith about it, I thought, oh, this will be great, this will be fun. And in the last 3 weeks, I've been going, what was I thinking? It's also a challenge because I don't talk publicly about my faith very often, maybe because I am a little left of center. So this is also unusual. And I hope that I'm able to share some of what has given me hope and guidance throughout my career. So Taoism to Tillich. I've already given you a little bit of a disclaimer. Here's another. I have two more. The first is I am not an expert, Dr. Dovery, in either Tillich, or Taoism. Let me be really clear. The only time I studied these was in college. These are my reflections. And so some of you may actually know more than I do about both Tillich and Taoism. If so, let's have a conversation later. I also want to say that Tillich was not a big fan of Taoism or Eastern religions. In fact, I found in one of the books that I was reviewing an explicit statement that said, I don't think much of these. So therefore, the connections I am making to Taoism and from Tillich's writings are mine, and he's probably spinning in his grave when I make them. So heads up. As I think about what I'm going to talk about today, there are three themes that you're going to hear. The first is God's good earth, ultimate concern, which is out of Tillich's theology, and love at work. In order to understand my faith, you really have to start almost here. And these three lines from Robert Frost's poem, The Road Not Taken, have always meant a lot to me. And it's not because I chose the road less traveled, but because my siblings and I, and my brother Lynn is back there, actually were born on the road less traveled. And that is really what has made all the difference. That is a photograph of the pasture across the road. We weren't always creative in what we called things. And this is the family farm, that in the distance. You get a sense of creation when you grow up in that part of the world. And when you are raised by a German immigrant, or the grandson of German immigrants from Russia, who focused on conservation all the time. When we raised crops, we rotated crops because certain crops took nutrients out and other crops put them in. And when you raised cattle, you made sure that the cattle had enough to eat, so you'd never overgraze, because the earth was what took care of you. And so growing up, this farm was so important to us. It was also important to us from a faith perspective. We were called to take care of the earth, to be good stewards of it. And so that was a foundation for all of us growing up, and I think we all have a very strong connection to that farm in particular and to the land in general. So I don't know if you can see the golden eagles there, but this gives you another sense of what it's like to grow up in the wilds, and in some ways it was fairly wild. Now, my family was about 14 miles from the nearest town. We lived in South Dakota and went to church and school in North Dakota. And our family, my grandparents and my parents, actually built the new church, which is now about 80 years old. So we were always active in the church, and faith was always important to me. I am a Lutheran through and through, raised by Lutherans, and when my mother's sister married a Catholic and became a Catholic, she remembered crying, and then she said, but she's a better Catholic than she was a Lutheran, so I guess that's okay. So then, so you have this family that I grew up with and this farm where I came from, and then I came to Concordia. And this is actually a photograph of my class, from my class. And, so this good Lutheran comes to Concordia, and as Faith mentioned, you have to take two religion classes. So my freshman year I took a religion class, and wouldn't you know, I signed up for Dr. Larry Alderank's world religion classes. Now, I expected a few more chuckles because people know Dr. Larry Alderank. I loved him. He was shockingly laid back. I mean, he was an interesting character. And the day that he walked into the classroom, sat down cross-legged on the desk in front of us and started to lecture about world religions, it was like, okay, well, this is not high school anymore. what I really valued about how Larry taught world religions is that he didn't teach it comparatively as, okay, there's this religion and then there's the Christian faith, or this is how it compares to Lutheranism or whatever. He taught it as if this is the faith. This is the correct way of looking at the world. And so we got a sense of what each of those faiths was really like. And we could do all that comparison stuff on our own, but we got inside each of those religions. And I valued that very much. And as I was listening to Larry, going through that course, Taoism spoke to me. And I think in large part because of the connection to the farm. So I'm going to share a couple of some of the early teachings that when I was going back and doing some research, I actually found it very quickly, which kind of was interesting considering the boxes in our basement. But I wanted to share two of the first chapters, portions of the first chapter, and then a third from the farther in. The nameless is the beginning of heaven and earth. The named is the mother of 10,000 things. Ever desireless, one can see the mystery. Ever desiring, one can see the manifestations. When you grow up and you don't know what a crop is like, whether or not you're going to have enough rain for a crop, and you don't know if it's going to hail in August, because that could happen. You could have a fabulous crop, and then there could be hail, and you could lose everything. And yet, as you look around, you can't help but realize God's hand is in everything around you. So the mystery and the manifestations really spoke to what I believed in ways that I hadn't ever read before. And then, in chapter 2, under heaven all can see beauty as beauty only because there is ugliness. All can know good as good only because there is evil. Therefore, having and not having arise together. Difficult and easy complement each other. Long and short contrast each other. High and low rest upon each other. Voice and sound harmonize each other. Front and back follow each other. Light and dark, yin and yang, they are all together in one thing. And there are times when you have to have cold to have warmth. And some seeds have to die and be frozen before they can be reborn. And that is part of that manifestation and that mystery. In order to have rhubarb, it has to freeze. And we know how wonderful rhubarb is. And that's just a small indication of God's miracles. And again, this was one of the things that grounded me in my faith and made me think more broadly about faith rather than just the Lutheran side of things or the Christian side of things. What is faith in a broader sense? And then there was this one. When we lack a sense of awe, there will be disaster. Oh my goodness, this speaks so strongly to me. When we lack a sense of awe, we lose perspective. When we lack a sense of awe, we make poor decisions. When Bill and I were moving back to this area, a realtor was taking me down to see a farmstead down by Horace. And she was so excited. She said, "Look at all this." She said, "There wasn't anything here just a couple years ago." Really? Needless to say, we did not work with her because there was farmland. And I know I look at my friends from More Engineering who've heard me more than once go, "Oh, they're building another development on this rich farmland. They don't know what they've got." Oh my goodness. So this sense of awe is something, and this connection to the earth is something that I've carried with me. And I've often joked that if I ever have open heart surgery, they're going to open my chest and go, where did this farmland come from? Because that's how strongly connected I feel to the land. So then, I loved classes. I loved this religion class so much, I took more classes in religion. And I even took a couple more from Larry and a few others. And the next class was from Dr. Donald Luck. And you probably couldn't find someone more different than Larry Alderank. And he taught, I think his dissertation might have been with Tillich. And so he was very passionate about this. And I found another voice that spoke to me. And I'm just going to, actually, I found this in the Concordian archives, which was kind of fun. And it was fun, too, because I remembered reading the original eons ago. From this particular section, what I want to call your attention to is that Luck feels that a Christianity that is just concerned with individual salvation is not prepared to confront a culture and provide it with alternatives. I think it's important to recognize the just is just concerned. From Dr. Luck's perspective and Dr. Tillich's perspective, it's important to say just. In addition, not only is it important for the individual salvation, it is bigger than individual salvation. It can't be just about an individual. It has to be bigger. And then this is just an indication. I enjoyed this part because this is just an indication of how biting a sense of humor he could have, and I was always glad that he didn't point it at me. His point, and I'm going to paraphrase this a little bit, if the church can't come up with ministry more effective than techniques of business or psychological counseling, it ought to go out of business. And he meant it. We need something bigger, something broader. And finally, what he was really getting at is that the church needs to provide a vision that can't be obtained from society or the human heart, but only from a particular source, which for Christians is Jesus the Christ. And that last statement is powerful in that it opens up a broader perspective of God. And so that's what I'm going to talk about next, this ultimate concern. From Tillich's writing, the absolute, the holy itself, transcends and judges every religion. The ultimate in being and meaning cannot be limited, cannot be caught in any particular religion, in any particular sacred place, or by any particular sacred action. That doesn't mean sacred places don't exist. That doesn't mean that there aren't sacred actions. They are. There is just something more than that. The holy itself is bigger, more. And so how do we understand that? Now, I'm going to beg you to bear with me. Tillich is not easy. Tillich is really kind of hard. And I want to give you a little bit of context about Tillich. He was born at the end of the 19th century. He grew up in Germany. He was raised by a German pastor. He got his doctorate in both theology and I believe in philosophy. And he was teaching at a German university when Hitler rose to power. And in 1938, as a result of that, he lost his job. He was invited to come to the United States to Union Theological Seminary, not speaking a word of English, to teach. And you teachers think you had a hard time. So he came to the United States, and so he escaped Germany, but that shaped his thinking and why he was so focused on making sure we understood the holy, the absolute, in a bigger context. That history, and quite honestly, as I was rereading some of his writings in preparation for this, I was struck by how much it sounded like he was writing for today. He was very passionate about this absolute, the holy itself being bigger than religion, any particular religion. So let's bear with me as we go through the next part, because I'm going to get to an end that makes sense, but the next slides may not. Heads up. Both the things about which we're concerned and we ourselves come to an end. Tillich's point is we are concerned about lots of things. We have worries. In fact, his point is that we as humans are defined by the fact that we care about something. We are concerned about things. That's part of what makes us human. If we get so concerned about those things that don't last, they can become tyrants for us. They can suck us up and they can own us. And we make all of our decisions around those things that we're concerned about. And I learned a few years after I took this class when I was going through Stephen Ministry training, which is lay listening, about addiction. And up to that point, I didn't know anything about addiction. My family, we had no one in our family, as far as I knew, who was addicted. So didn't understand this. But how it was explained brought this to mind, in that an addiction controls you. It is your God, because you make all decisions about that addiction, and you put that addiction first before anything else. So as Tillich is talking about this, he's like, okay, why are we concerned? How are we concerned about all these little things and even our own lives when they all pass away? There has to be more. And he says, yes, there is more. The one thing needed, this is the first and in some sense the best answer I can give, is to be concerned ultimately, unconditionally, infinitely. I wouldn't blame you if you read that and go, what? This is what he means. Whoops. He means that there is a concern, the ultimate concern, that puts everything in context. It is this concern that when we are grasped by the one thing that is needed, all the others are under our feet. They concern us, but not ultimately. And when we lose them, we do not lose the one thing we need, and that cannot be taken from us. And what is that? That is love. Death is given power over everything finite, especially in our period of history, but death is given no power over love. Love is stronger. It is at work where the power of death is strongest, in war and persecution and homelessness and hunger and physical death itself. In the smallest and most hidden ways, as in the greatest and most visible one, it rescues life from death. It rescues each of us, for love is stronger than death. And that is the ultimate concern. Love. Not just the love we have for each other, but the all-encompassing love that God, the Absolute, has for us and the entire world, and everything that exists or ever has existed or will. And this is the context that I took into the world for my faith. So what does this love look like and mean in action? For love does not remove, it establishes justice. We speak for a love which respects the claim of the other one to be acknowledged as what he is, and the claim of ourselves to be acknowledged as what we are, above all, as persons. Love makes justice just. And I left the last sentence on, not as big. The divine love is justifying love, accepting and fulfilling him who, according to calculating justice, must be rejected. So we go back that we are born in a sinful world. We are broken. We cannot be justified. and we land right back on by grace alone. And that's where we come round full circle, and yet it's love at the center. So that's the end of college. And by the time I finished this conversation, or learning about Tillich and having this embedded in my brain, I now had a minor in religion. And I also got a minor in Greek. So what does one do with a minor in Greek and a minor in religion and a major in English writing? One would think I would have gone to seminary. That had been the plan. But I just couldn't bear the thought of studying theology for 3 years. I loved it, but I'm sorry, I just couldn't stand it. So I went out into the world, and I moved to the Twin Cities. And what do you do when you have an English major and 2 minors in such helpful things as religion and Greek? Well, you waitress at a pizza restaurant, and you clean the pizza restaurant because you need more money, and then you work full-time as an assistant manager in a clothing store. And the day that I actually worked 22 out of 24 hours, I said something has to give. And I thought about what I wanted to do, because I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I said, what am I good at? I'm good at school, but I'm good at writing. I'm gonna look for a job where I'm writing. And so I was very creative. I brought out the business yellow pages, and I went to the back where it said writing, and I started at the top of the list, and I called every single organization and talked to somebody in that organization until I got a referral to a big employer in the Twin Cities called IDS. And they didn't care if I had a religion degree, they just wanted to know if I knew grammar. And I knew grammar, so I was hired by this company, IDS, which eventually became American Express Financial Advisors. And I was in the sales communications department, and I was hired about the same time that IDS was acquired by American Express. And the McKinsey consultant who had assessed IDS for a purchase was a gentleman named Harvey Gollop. And when Harvey came to IDS, he became the president. And he said, sorry, Joni, he said, throw out all of those HR handbooks we've got. We've got too many rules. What we really want to do is we want to become the premier financial planning organization in the United States. And all we need are a set of core values that will help us make decisions. So we know what we want to do, and here are the core values. And he had 6. Okay, folks who know me, 6 is a bad number. You need to have an odd number because you can remember it. And I think I can remember 5. I know I can't remember all 6. Citizenship, clients, integrity, individualism, and excellence. Like I said, can't remember that 6th one. Those 6 values became a part of our thought process as individuals throughout that organization, and we made decisions based on that. It was a marvelous time to work at IDS, which became American Express Financial Advisors. I learned so much about leadership and management from that time, and I would say I got my first master's in education through the training that Harvey made possible in that organization. I also learned alignment with one's faith through the people I worked with, because it wasn't just about making money. Making money was important. It was also about how we treated each other. And probably the lesson that I learned where I learned that lesson from most strongly was in my 3rd or 4th role in the organization when I moved into the compensation department, field compensation department. I was working for a gentleman named John Golden, and one of my colleagues, I had brought in because one of his managers, a gentleman named Bob Hudson, had fallen ill. And everybody knew Bob at American Express. He was a beacon. He was like Sharon, just a shining example of warmth and friendliness, and everybody just knows who Bob was at that company. So I bumped into Bob on my way to the office one day. We crossed in the elevator, and I couldn't believe it. I hardly recognized him. He was always slender, but now he was gaunt and he was pale. And I found out that Bob had AIDS. And which at the time was a bit of a shock because he had dated some of my friends. And I was like, gay? Bob? Really? And it turned out this small North Dakota farm boy was uncomfortable letting people know at that time in the late 80s, early 90s that he was gay. And he was concerned. When he found out he had AIDS, he had to let people know what was going on. John Golden and the rest of the team made sure Bob always was welcome at work. He could only work a couple hours a day, maybe 2 or 3 times a week toward the end. And this was well before FMLA. This was when it was an organization's choice. And John had to sacrifice a lot to keep Bob on staff. But he did it because it was the right thing to do. It was the loving thing to do. So that was a shining example of love at work and faith at work for me. So those of you who know me know I get bored. And I found that I just kept moving around the organization, and American Express was big enough where I could do that. So once I wrapped up my assignment in compensation, I moved into marketing, and I spent 4 years in marketing and got to work on my master's in adult education from the University of St. Thomas. That was blast. And once I wrapped that up, I was like, okay, what's next? And I became the director of the American Express Financial Advisors University. That's a mouthful. And I had the pleasure of working with a marvelous team of people. And we identified our core values and how we were going to work together. And we did some amazing things. And then I got a call out of the blue from a headhunter. And he said, there's this little broker-dealer down in Texas who would like to strengthen its training program. In fact, it doesn't have a training program, so it would like you to come down and build a training program. Are you interested? And I said, oh, my husband's family is here. I've never moved. We've never lived anyplace else. You know, I got a great gig going here in Minnesota. And my husband said, why not give it a shot? I've never lived anyplace else. Why not try Texas? So we went down for an interview, and I met Herbie Vest, the co-founder of HD Vest Financial Services, and ended up taking the job and moving to Flower Mound, Texas, and worked in Irving, Texas. Yes, the home of the Cowboys. I never did go to a game. About 9 months after I was there, Wells Fargo bought HD Vest. So I left a big company to go to a small company just for the little company to be bought by another big company. But HD Vest was pretty much left on its own. Now, the gentleman I worked for, the president of the company, is Roger Oakes, and he is one of the operationally best leaders I've ever worked for. The thing is, at HD Vest, we didn't really have a set of core values. We didn't articulate those. And you might imagine I had many conversations with Roger about this fact, but he just didn't see the need to be explicit. And in some ways, he was right, because we worked pretty well together. It was this relatively small company of only about 500 corporate office people. And we were focused on doing the right thing to help these CPAs and enrolled agents. Anybody know what an enrolled agent is? The IRS designation for someone who can do taxes. EA, in case. Now, CFO, you didn't know that? Oh my goodness. I had no clue what an EA was until I went there, and yet these were the most trusted advisors, and so Herb Vest wanted to make sure that they could sell financial products. That was the whole point, and that was our goal. Most trusted advisors being able to provide financial services, recommendations, and advice. And so I was there to help train these advisors. And Roger was the leader of this organization, and solid as they come. And fairness and building a place of integrity and ethics were all part of it, but not explicit. And it was a great time in Texas. But my husband did not like summers in Texas. Yeah, you can imagine. So I ended up taking a job in North Dakota. As I was leaving, the executive manager, my colleague, the executive manager of information technology, and I happened to be going out to our cars together. And he said, "Leann, we're going to miss you around here." And I said, "Oh, thank you so much. That's very nice of you to say." And he said, "No," he said, "Leann, I'm serious. You are a person of faith." And I looked at him and I said, "Yes?" He said, "I know, you don't talk about it." He said, "I know you're a person of faith because when we're having conversations, you don't look out just for your department. You look out for all of us. You look out for what's right." There isn't a compliment I've ever received that has touched me as much, because that meant I was working in alignment with my faith. So, hard to imagine I left such a great place to work, but I did, and I came up to North Dakota to work at Lutheran Social Services. Now, I negotiated with my boss at the time. I said, "I spent a long time building up a good reputation and a good knowledge base. It's really hard for me to leave it all behind." I said, "Can I do projects on the side as long as it doesn't interfere with my everyday work and I can get my work done?" And he said, "Sure." So that's what I did. And I had 5 or 6 advisors that I did phone coaching with and occasional trips. And then I got to travel across the state of North Dakota. And it was a great gift to see parts of North Dakota I'd never seen before. When you come over that ridge on Highway 2 over into to overlook that expanse of the valley over Williston, oh my goodness, it's inspiring. It's awesome. I can't make myself go out there now. This was pre-oil well, and I just remember that stunning sunset when I was driving over that hill, that ridge, and the beauty of the Killdeer Mountains and the north section of the Teddy Roosevelt National Park. All such beauty that I had the chance to see. Unfortunately, I loved working with my clients way more than I loved doing development. So, mutual decision to leave LSS and went to work on my own as a consultant, and had the opportunity to start working with several different companies. And about that same year that I went on my own, Eric Johnson, one of my classmates and a Concordia employee, introduced me to this guy, Mike Sleddy. Those of you who know Mike know that he is the nicest guy in the whole world. He is kind, generous, and has a deep faith. And we found that we both believed many of the same things. We believed that an organization with a mission, a purpose, and a shared set of values that believed in its people could do almost anything. Now, we do not think alike. We approach the world differently. I love that. I love the fact that he challenges me. I love the fact that when I look at something this way, he's coming at it from another way, because that makes us stronger. And so, in 2010, we formed Great Outcomes Consulting. And then this college, or this school across the river, decided they needed a president. And I knew, pardon my language, I was screwed. Because I knew they were smart enough to know that he was the best person for the job. And I knew it was perfect for him. The blessing for me is that he said, no, I can still be part of this. And so Mike is still part of Great Outcomes Consulting. Now, granted, he's a little part. He is my sounding board. He is sometimes my cheerleader. He is a great editor. I love that, that he is able to help me cut things down when I need to. And he's not here, so Eric, you're going to have to tell him I said nice things. So when he and I put together, worked on Great Outcomes Consulting, we wanted a framework with which to work with our clients. And no surprise, we started with leadership. Character, clarifying the mission and values of the organization. So let's talk a little bit about character and how this aligns with where I started, which is with Tillich and Taoism. So character is about mission. The one thing needed is to be concerned ultimately, unconditionally, and infinitely. What is your purpose, really? Not what you do, but why. Why do you do whatever you do? And if your why is to make money, you miss the point. Remember those concerns. Money is a short-term concern. Now, Greg has already told you, I understand profitability. If you don't have profit, you're not going to be in business very long. You have to make money to stay in business. To do great things, to help your community, you have to be profitable. It's the right thing. It's not bad. It's a good thing. It's not why you do what you do. Why you do what you do is a demonstration of what you believe. And if you believe you are put here on this earth for this moment in time to love, then you have a strong purpose. And how you articulate that love can be done in many ways. But it starts with love, making a difference, making the world a better place. And honestly, if that isn't somewhere in the core, you're not going to work with me. And this is from Taoism. Surrender yourself humbly, then you can be trusted to care for all things. Love the world as your own self, then you can truly care for all things. That's purpose. So what about values? What does Taoism and Tillich have to say about values? Well, from the 58th chapter of Tao Te Ching, it's, when a country is ruled with a light hand, the people are simple. When the country is ruled with severity, people are cunning. Therefore, the leader is sharp, but not cutting, pointed, but not piercing, straightforward, but not unrestrained, brilliant, but not blinding. And from the 23rd chapter, he who does not trust enough will not be trusted. How true is that? If someone doesn't trust you, you're not going to trust them. Very easy. So I did some Googling on Tillich as I was preparing, and this came out as a Tillich quote. The first duty of love is to listen. Now, you've seen enough of Tillich's writing to know, does this sound like him? It is too straightforward. I was like, I don't buy it. Where did this come from? And then I found it. This is what he actually said. In order to know what is just, love listens. It is the first task to it is its first task to listen. Now that sounds like Tillich. That being said, the first duty of love is to listen. Let's stick with that because that's easily understood. And that I agree with. We can listen. So, what are the values? Respect, integrity, collaboration, transparency, trust. These values, in some way, are represented in nearly every organization I have the privilege to work with. They may not say them in exactly the same way, but these come out as being the values of the organization. A very new client of mine has 3 values: wisdom, relationships, and trust. There you go. They're right there. And guess what? What do these values all mean? It's all about love. Love. So, let's drop down to discipline because, you know, that working in alignment is about working with a discipline. In order to accomplish our objectives, we have to have discipline. So how do we do that? Well, according to Tao, they who know that enough is enough will always have enough. Knowing ignorance is strength. Ignoring knowledge is sickness. So basically, let's use our resources wisely. Let's not look at them as a scarcity, but as an abundance. And let's value knowing what we don't know and also valuing other people who work with us, who know more than we do. Let's not be afraid of smart people and of information. Peace is easily maintained. Trouble is easily overcome before it starts. The brittle is easily shattered. The small is easily scattered. Deal with it before it happens. Set things in order before there's confusion. In other words, don't avoid conflict. Confront it when it's small, when it's not such a big deal. I learned this very early in my career when I managed a department. I took on the management of a little tiny department with 4 people in it. Actually, it was 1 person in it because 3 had transferred out to take promotion, so there was 1 gentleman in it, and I got to hire the other 3. And Phil was the one who was there. And Phil and I there was just a stress between us. So one day, I asked, Phil, why don't we sit in the conference room and talk? And as we sat down, I said, Phil, there's just a tension between us, and we need to work together. And he looked at me and he said, but I don't like you. Okay, I firmly believe this was an out-of-body experience because I'm not this calm normally. I said, oh, that's okay. You don't have to like me. He said, but Leann, I want to go out for beers with the people I work with. I want to like them as people. And I said, Phil, I am not going to go out for a beer with you. That is not going to happen. How about if we start, can you respect my decisions? Well, I don't. I said, okay, let's take one decision at a time and work through it. By the time we finished that conversation, I had learned that he didn't like one of the decisions I made, in part because he didn't know all that went into it. And I said, at the end, I said, Phil, tell you what, anytime you think I'm going to make a boneheaded decision, I want you to come to me. In fact, come to me anytime, just in case I don't have the information you do. Because I want to make good decisions, and I may not have all the information. And by the way, sometimes I may not be able to tell you because it involves confidential information that is about one person, but I hope that for the most part, we can find a way to trust and respect each other. And I will say, when I left that department just 2 years later, he was mad because I was leaving. He didn't want me to go. And it's all because I had the courage, and it did take some courage, to sit down and ask him, what's going on? And to be willing to listen. So, this is for you, Troy. The best leaders are those their people know hardly exist. The next best is a leader who is loved and praised. Next comes the one who is feared. The worst is the leader who is despised. A leader who does not trust enough will not be trusted. The best leaders value their words and use them sparingly. When the work is done, the people say, we did it. So I've talked about 3 themes that guide my faith and that I work to align all the time in my life. God's good earth, ultimate concern, and love at work. So, in summary, because of our ultimate concern, because of love that we understand through Jesus Christ, we consider our actions not just in the context of the immediate concerns, but in the context of our faith. And that's all I have.
And now we have a few minutes that we can ask Leann some tough questions about Tillich. Anyone? I think the expert on Tillich has a question for you.
Oh, dear.
We talked a little bit about, and I asked about that, and we looked up at Taoism, this self-acceptance, being able to be transparent, you picked up on that, and being able to reflect on selves. I like what you said in terms of being able to look at the whole picture and being able to see this self-transcendence, in which Tillich talked about being able to see in the wider range. And I like what you said. I think there's though they're different, they had all this in common. Mm-hmm. And I was impressed, so
Oh, thank you.
Anyone else with a question or a comment? Dr. Davry?
Now I'm on the spot.
My observation is that as Lutheran Christians coming, looking at ethics through a Lutheran perspective, we are aware that God works through many people and many sources and many traditions. So that enables us to claim a good idea from Taoism and a good idea from Tillich, because we believe that God's will is being revealed in a million different ways through a million different people. We, of course, have a lens through which we assess that, and the lens of love gives us a lot of clarity about where wisdom lies. So I appreciate the fact that you have come at it this way and given us a really constructive context. I'm wondering if you could tell us, when you're doing a training session with a group of people, how deep do you go into Tao and how deep do you go into Tillich?
They wouldn't know that I ever do.
Okay, so this is background. This is your background for the things that you actually do professionally and publicly. Okay, I appreciate that.
I think that actually some of my clients are in this room. I think what they will might say, and maybe I should ask Troy because he was probably the least reserved of the people in the room, about the demonstration of love that I have when I'm working with a team, and the fact that it really is about finding the right thing, the fair thing, the aligned thing.
Is that messy sometimes?
Oh, humans are always messy. Sometimes, I will say one, I have to be careful because I don't want to indicate, there are times when you have to be willing to take a pretty big risk in a setting, and sometimes a mistake in a conversation can actually lead to a marvelous revelation, and being willing to follow that messiness a little bit deeper and not let it slink away can actually be the most loving thing you can do, even though it's not comfortable for anyone in the room at that particular moment. Sometimes it gives voice that wouldn't have happened if you weren't willing to take that risk and dig a little deeper into the messiness of a mistake. So.
One final comment or question? Someone want to volunteer before I volunteer somebody? Perfect.
Well, as a client, I definitely see where some of your advice and guidance is coming from. But I also just want to say it's very inspiring and has given me a lot to think about. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
By the way, all but one of these photographs is from my own personal collection. So, yeah, even some of the blurry ones, sadly. So, thank you all so much.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you, Leann, for teaching us, for informing us, for inspiring us. Next month, we shall get some more inspiration from an out-of-towner, Dr. Margaret Benefil. She is the executive director of Shalem Institute, which does spiritual direction types of things out of Washington, D.C. And she's also been running her own ship for about 20 years, focusing on executive leadership development. Her organization is called Executive Soul. And the topic she'll be talking about is the soul of a leader. And guess what? Mike Sletty will do the invocation next month. So lots of connections here. So I hope we shall see you, especially those of you who are new to our monthly luncheon. I hope you will make this a habit. Thank you so much for coming today. See you next month. You've got the cards on your table. You've got cards like this on your table, especially the new people that you can take with you.